so unsafe in my neighborhood anymore. I have the homeless that were trying to camp out, and I have made concessions with them, and I try to help them the best I can to keep them from trying to squat on my property. But it is so unsafe. I have men that cannot speak English in my front yard screaming at me, throwing mattresses in my front yard, throwing trash in my front yard. And I can't. Look at me, I weigh 95 pounds. I couldn't defend myself if I had to. My husband is elderly, and last night, after living in this home for 45 years, he said, Noelle, guess what? It's time to pack up and move. He said, we can't do this anymore. He said, it's killing both of us mentally. I don't understand what you expect of us as citizens. I mean, I understand they're here under temporary protected status, and you're protecting them, and I understand that our city services are overwhelmed and understaffed. But who's protecting us? If we're protecting them, who's protecting me? I want out of this town. I am sorry. Please give me a reason to stay. Thank you. I'm done.
Now that sounds like she's clearly just bigoted, racist. And she's definitely the problem in this situation.
Well, she's white, so I knew all those things before I even had to hear anything.
Right, naturally. Yeah, and of course we're obviously being sarcastic here, listeners, but I mean the reality is that she nailed it on the head when she said, I know that you're protecting them because again these immigrants are under protected status, but she said, but who's protecting us? And that's really the question that it boils down to. This woman understands the idea of the role that the civil magistrate is supposed to perform. You know, the civil magistrate is supposed to look after the people that God has entrusted them with. They're not supposed to look to the foreigner. Aristotle talks about how the tyrant prefers the foreigner over the citizen. It's a sign of a tyrant too. Why? Because the foreigner doesn't have any allegiance to the land of which that the tyrant is hoping to rule over. So they don't have to worry about a rebellion necessarily. They can just give them a very transactional relationship. And, and I'm of course not trying to imply that all these individuals that are migrating are bad. But at the end of the day, you can see that this woman is being a lot more patient than I would probably be. Coming to her city and begging them, please, I don't want to leave. Give me a reason to stay. And I don't know what the result is ultimately going to be from her pleas, but it's absolutely heartbreaking to see.
Yeah. To touch on too, you mentioned the Christians that are typically very supportive. I saw one guy today, he said, I don't know who he was, but he had a PhD and was going to seminary. So you know that the take that's about to come out is going to be pretty bad. But he said the way we welcome the Haitian migrant is the way we welcome Christ. And it's a condition of, someone introduced me to this term, telescopic philanthropy. That is to say, philanthropy, which is doing good deeds. But what it does is it raises up a telescope and looks across the ocean. And it says, oh, good deeds and support and feeding the poor. I'm going to do that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this lens and I'm going to look out there, miles across oceans to do this good. And in an image that kind of illustrates it, it's a woman doing that. And then right beside her, there are starving orphans. And Christians will do this silly thing, where they'll look out and they'll say, oh, the least of these, oh, the migrant, oh, the refugee. And hear me, some are really, I mean, you talk about like in Sudan in the 90s when people were fleeing, just young boys trying to swim across crocodile-infested waters as civil war is just destroying their country. There really are people that are really escaping from difficult scenarios. But they're not the only person, the only neighbor that as Christians and as just human beings, we're necessarily called to care for. It's not the person on the other side of the world, actually, that demands our greatest affinity, our greatest love, and our greatest care. If you live in Springfield, Ohio, that woman is actually your neighbor in a much real and much more demanding sense than anyone from Haiti is. She shared the space. She literally physically lives on your street, in your borough, in your county, and you can see her tears, and you can see, I mean, that is just an intimidating situation. Grown men on your lawn, shouting, yelling. Can you? I could not imagine as a man even going to sleep with people outside my door like that. It's, as they're saying, it's destructive to their life. But so-called Christians shamefully will look out and they'll say, we've got to welcome them. To welcome them is to be like Christ. This is our Christian duty. And they'll hate And that is what it is. They will hate their neighbor that lives down the street from them, that lives in their same county, the Christian that has shared their nation maybe for 100 years. They'll despise them. And the love they'll do, just one thing I want to mention, when you bring people in that don't know an area, a language, a way of life, you don't do them a favor. I was deployed in the Middle East, and I remember driving through Kuwait and Bahrain and just thinking, I would really not want to live here. Why? Because I don't know anything about it. I don't know what side of the road to drive on. I don't know the language. I don't know the habits. I don't like the food. It's disorienting. So it's not like that we bring these people in and they're just welcomed into this place they're familiar with, they've resided in, they're comfortable. No, you're displacing someone and bringing them into somewhere where they're uncomfortable, where they don't know anything that's going on, and they're disrupting your way of life. So congratulations, you've hated your neighbor on your street by destroying their neighborhood. And the people you claim to help, the people you claim to love and to welcome in, you didn't do them a favor either. So in your attempt to love somebody, you have hated everyone. And there are Christians that do this all day long by pro-immigration policies. The Pope is the Roman Catholic Pope, very supportive of it. And that is evil.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I know that there's possibly going to be some critics that listen to this episode, and they're just still going to read us in the most uncharitable way. But either way, I do want to kind of maybe touch on, just the fact that the Lord hates unjust scales. And something that's important to remember as well is that these are individuals, many of which have cut the line. I've worked with a lot of international individuals in some of my past work. And in doing so, I have met a lot of truly wonderful people that want to immigrate to the United States. Many of them have complained to me that they can't because the line is just so long and the process is just so hard. And meanwhile, you've got these coyotes that are trafficking people across the border. There are young children that are being sold into sex trafficking across the border. There's fentanyl pouring across the border. But either way, even if we want to pretend that the trafficking and the fentanyl is not happening, at the end of the day, it still boils down to there's individuals that are cutting the line, and the Lord hates unjust scales. Lastly, America has been incredibly blessed, and there's so many individuals that are probably going to look at this, people like you and I, Wesley, and they're going to say, well, you guys have a little extra that you could skim off the top to give to your neighbor from Haiti or Venezuela or whatever the case may be. And at the end of the day, you have to realize that if you truly understand our economic situation in America, you would know that we are a ticking time bomb, and we have a lot of issues that we need to take care of, and we have also record high unemployment. In fact, I've seen several charts just this week that have shown that employment is going up for illegal immigrants while going down for U.S. born citizens.
Yeah.
So we have these individuals that are truly being displaced out of their own economy because people are jumping the line, coming across the border, or in some cases even being flown in by the Biden administration, like secretly into Chattanooga in the middle of the night, for those that know. And suddenly U.S. born citizens are looking around, not able to find a job. And then they're seeing states like California and New York giving free education or housing, 5-star hotels to illegal immigrants. So at the end of the day, the Lord hates unjust scales. And these individuals are cutting the line. And I think it's very easy to make a biblical case that we are called to take care of our own households before we reach outside of our household. And that goes the same for our civil leaders. They should absolutely take care of Americans first, who are they responsible for. And then when our crime is at a manageable level, and when our economy is not about to collapse under the weight of fiat currency, we want to talk about reaching out and helping other countries at that point in time. Sure, let's have that discussion, but we are nowhere near that. So right now we have to feed our own children who are hungry before we feed the starving children outside of our family. That's just what it boils down to. That would be my responsibility as a husband, a father, and a provider to my family. And that is the same on a more macro scale for our civil leaders?